1980s. A decade known for big hair, neon colors, blockbuster movies, and unfortunately, a dark secret that shook the entire world. Let's go back to where it all started. In the first few years of the decade, people were concerned about a new virus that was becoming common, a virus that would weaken their immune systems and make them vulnerable to other diseases. A virus that would later be known as HIV, and how a big pharmaceutical company ended up spreading this life-threatening virus. The company at the center of this incident is Bayer Corporations. With a history of about 150 years, Bayer has been working in the pharmaceutical industry for a long time. Today, it has expanded its operations in over 55 countries across the world, including Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Thailand, US, UK, and Vietnam. Bayer started as a manufacturer of synthetic dyestuffs and has now evolved into a multinational with subsidiaries in a lot of domains, including pharmaceutical. The other important population that was at the center of this incident were the patients diagnosed with haemophilia at the time. Haemophilia is a genetic disorder that leads to inability of the body to control blood clotting, resulting in uncontrollable bleeding. Now, this disorder was incurable, but pharmaceutical companies had developed injectable blood products to manage haemophilia A, which is caused by a deficiency in the blood clotting protein, factor VIII. The products were a concentrated form of factor VIII, taken from the blood plasma of donors. This process made great improvements in the life expectancy of hemophiliacs. But obviously, these donors needed to be healthy themselves to give their plasma for another patient. And here is where things were about to go wrong. In 1981, there was a sudden increase in people affected by an unidentified virus. The virus would weaken the immune system, which ultimately makes a person vulnerable to other diseases. It becomes life-threatening in cases where the immune system is unable to fight against the common diseases as well. This virus was later known as HIV. This increase was obvious in patients with haemophilia. No one knew what was happening. Patients started discovering that they were HIV positive at their checkups. A pattern was then identified. Patients who received transfusions from Bayer factor VIII products were the ones who now had a HIV diagnosis. This caused panic among these patients. What exactly happened that a pharmaceutical company ended up spreading such a dangerous virus? It was discovered that the plasma donors for the development of these products include risky populations in the US: homosexuals, intravenous drug users, prisoners, and former inmates. These were people who were believed to be more vulnerable to the virus at the time. This was because of their lifestyle, and also little awareness of safety precautions in the general public.
A mystery disease known as the gay plague has become an epidemic unprecedented in the history of American medicine. That today from the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta. Topping the list of likely victims are male homosexuals who have many partners and drug users who inject themselves with needles.
Andreas Moritz wrote an exploratory book and claimed Bayer preferred to speed up the process of the development and broke American federal laws. The requirement that they screen out donors from infectious diseases, including viral hepatitis. Approximately, Bayer drew out blood from around 10,000 high-risk donors. We could have given some leverage here to Bayer because at the time of this incident, there was no available method to screen out HIV, and the virus was becoming increasingly common.
1 million Americans may have been infected with the AIDS virus, and more than 12,000 are expected to develop the deadly disease next year.
But some ways could have prevented what happened next. Soon after this controversy, pharmaceutical manufacturers came up with a method to make HIV inactive if it was present in the plasma collected. By heating the concentrate, HIV becomes inactive. This discovery dropped the infection rate to 0. Pretty important discovery. But as expected, it also increased the cost and made the product 6 times more expensive to produce. Now the question here is, was Bayer unbothered or too greedy to think about these alternatives? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. After these products were supplied to the market, it ended up becoming a nightmare for people. People who were already struggling with one disease. Almost 90% of those who received a transfusion of these products were infected with HIV by the time of their next follow-up. It was estimated that the rate of transmission of HIV through these transfusions was greater than both unprotected sex and sharing needles, the 2 primary causes of HIV transmission before Bayer entered the scene. CDC soon warned Bayer that the transfusion from their products was the reason for the sudden increase in HIV cases in the US. An estimated 6,000 to 10,000 people were infected by the virus. As a result, they had to stop their existing method of production and adopt the heating practice, as it was clear that the previous batch of products were spreading HIV. Soon, another serious thing that came forward was that Bayer continued to supply products from that batch to use up their stocks, just when you thought it couldn't get more depressing. A report by Walt Bogdanich and Eric Coley from the New York Times revealed multiple official company documents to prove this accusation. Internal memorandums, minutes of company marketing meetings, and telex to foreign distributors all exposed the deliberate attempt of Bayer to sell these HIV-contaminated products. The HIV-contaminated products were continuously distributed in the local as well as global markets. And when it became difficult for Bayer to continue this, they decided to take another approach. Bayer was accused of dumping the tainted products in less developed countries, despite a refusal from these suppliers. Bayer maintained that the distributors that the unheated product caused no severe hazard and was the same fine product they have supplied for years. Li Wei-chun, whose son died in 1996 at the age of 23 and was one of the hemophiliacs who got AIDS after using that product, said they did not care about the lives in Asia. On the other hand, Bayer claimed countries such as Japan and Taiwan were slow to approve their newer version of the products, which forced the Japanese and Taiwanese customers to purchase the older version. They also claimed that customers around the world preferred the first version because they thought it worked better for them. The customers, apparently, believed that heating the concentration would make the product less effective for them. This claim, unlike those against Bayer, was never proven, whatever the reason for their conduct. Bayer's contaminated products led to the deaths of tens of thousands of people all over the world, with less developed countries taking the most significant hit. In 1997, Bayer paid $300 million into a compensation fund for hemophiliacs with HIV. The details of this settlement remain hidden, as the affectees and their lawyers are not allowed to talk about it. It was a good step in trying to compensate for their losses, but the years of struggle are difficult to put a price on. To this day, we see survivors' stories that bring forward the intensity of their struggles. People who were only children at the time have come forward to share their stories. This makes it even more difficult to note that Bayer has not yet accepted responsibility. And in 2003, its president, Jack Ryan, issued a statement claiming they had behaved responsibly, ethically, and humanely. None of the Bayer executives were arrested. No one was held accountable for these decisions. It is difficult to admit the reality that the medicines that were meant to ease their pain became the reason for more of it, and the pharmaceutical companies who were supposed to help these patients were the reason they had to suffer. If you enjoyed these types of videos and want to get more, make sure to subscribe to TW+.